A routine traffic stop becomes a defining moment when a police officer's assumptions collide with an unexpected truth. His target is the man who holds his future in his hands. The sun dipped low over Sacramento, streaking the sky with gold and amber as Eric Porter drove home after a long day. His sedan hummed steadily, the soft sound of the radio blending with the city's evening pulse. As he approached a yellow light, he slowed, but the red flashed just as he crossed. Before he could process it, red and blue lights flared in his rear-view mirror, followed by the sharp wail of a siren. Eric's brows furrowed slightly as he pulled to the curb, rolling down his window. Behind him, a police cruiser parked, and out stepped Officer Bradley Larson, mid-30s, buzz-cut, badge gleaming under the streetlights. He adjusted his belt and strode toward the car with the practiced confidence of someone who relished control. "License and registration," Larson said curtly, his voice flat but edged with authority. Eric complied without a word, retrieving the documents with deliberate, calm movements. Yet he felt Larson's gaze, not just assessing, but searching for something deeper. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Larson asked, leaning in slightly. "I'm not entirely sure," Eric replied evenly, his tone polite yet firm. "You didn't come to a full stop at the light." A flicker of hesitation in Larson's voice betrayed uncertainty. Eric frowned but gave a small nod. "I see. I thought I slowed in time, but I understand." Larson didn't respond immediately. Instead, he lingered, eyes narrowing as he studied Eric more closely. The routine stop had shifted. Something in Larson's stance, the way his posture stiffened, signaled he had already decided this was more than a minor infraction. He glanced at the license in his hand. "You're not from around here, are you?" Eric hesitated for a fraction of a second. "I moved here a few months ago. My address is on the license." But Larson wasn't really listening. His questions took a sharper edge, moving beyond the traffic stop. "Where were you headed in such a hurry?" "Just going home," Eric replied steadily, though the air between them grew heavier. Larson no longer saw him as just a driver. He saw something else, something that warranted suspicion. Eric could feel it, the unspoken assumptions, the shift in tone. But he remained still, unflinching. What Larson perceived as calmness wasn't naivety, it was control. And this was just the beginning. Larson took a step back, slowly folding Eric's documents before tucking them into his chest pocket. His smirk barely concealed a sense of triumph. "Step out of the car for me," he ordered. Eric's grip tightened slightly on the steering wheel, but his expression remained unreadable. "Is there a specific reason for that, officer?" His voice was measured, unwavering. Larson's lips twitched. "I asked you to step out of the car. You don't want to make this harder than it has to be." The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. Eric exhaled slowly, then opened the door. As he stepped out, Larson's gaze flicked over him, sizing him up. Taller than the officer, broad-shouldered, yet unthreatening. His tailored suit spoke of professionalism, his polished shoes of precision. But none of that mattered. "Hands where I can see them," Larson instructed. Eric complied, his movements deliberate. "Is there something specific you're looking for?" Larson smirked faintly. "Just routine. We've had some incidents around here. Can never be too careful. Incidents involving men in business suits driving sedans." Eric's voice was calm, but the meaning behind it was razor-sharp. But does this have more to do with something else?" The question landed like a punch. For the first time, Larson's composure faltered. His hand drifted near his belt, reflexive, unnecessary. "Watch your tone," he warned. "I'm simply asking a question, Eric countered, his voice steady. Transparency, you know? Larson scoffed but didn't answer. He paced a small circle in front of the car, as if trying to regain control. But Eric wasn't reacting the way most people would. No fear, no nervous fidgeting. Just poise. You seem awfully familiar with how this works, Larson muttered. You got something to hide? Eric let the silence stretch. Then, with quiet certainty, he said, No, officer. I just believe in being clear about the reasons for an interaction like this. Larson's fingers tapped his holster, his frustration thinly veiled. Turn around and place your hands on the hood, he ordered. I need to check for weapons. Eric raised an eyebrow. Weapons? His tone was incredulous, yet still composed. Do I look like someone carrying a weapon? I'm not going to ask you again. Eric hesitated, just a flicker, before calmly complying. The pat-down was rough, more about control than security. But Eric didn't react. You're clean, Larson muttered, almost irritated. Eric turned to face him. Of course I am. Larson squared his shoulders. You seem to know a lot about what I can and can't do. Care to explain why? Eric folded his arms, his stance effortlessly composed. I've had my fair share of interactions with law enforcement, he said. Let's just say I've learned a lot over the years. Larson's eyes narrowed. You a lawyer or something? Eric smiled faintly. Or something. Something in that answer unsettled Larson. He stepped closer, invading Eric's personal space. You think you're smarter than me? He growled. I don't think anything, officer, Eric replied evenly. I just believe in fairness. And so far, I'm not seeing much of it here. Larson's jaw tightened. He started to speak, but the words caught. Eric let the silence stretch before saying, Officer, I think it's time you knew who I am. Larson frowned. I don't care who you are. Eric reached into his pocket, slowly, deliberately. I'm reaching for my badge, he said calmly, watching Larson's fingers twitch near his holster. No need for theatrics. I want you to see it. He flipped open a leather wallet, revealing a gleaming badge. Eric Porter, he said, head of internal affairs, Sacramento Division. Larson's face paled. His confidence crumbled. He looked at the badge, then at Eric, searching for a way out. I oversee officer conduct, Eric continued, his voice quiet but firm. My job is to ensure the badge is worn with integrity. Larson swallowed, his hand dropping from his belt. The most troubling part of this, Eric went on, isn't the profiling. It's that you did all of this without even knowing who you were talking to. You assumed I wouldn't know my rights. And why? Larson opened his mouth, but Eric cut in. Because I didn't fit your idea of someone deserving respect. Silence. Here's what's going to happen, Eric said. You're going to return my documents and consider what you say next, very carefully. Because next time we meet, it won't be here. It'll be across a desk, and I'll be deciding whether you deserve to wear that badge. Larson handed back the documents, his hands shaking. Eric slid back into his car, meeting Larson's gaze one last time. The badge doesn't make you better than anyone, he said. It makes you accountable to everyone. And as he drove off, he knew this was just the beginning.